I'm so glad you're all here. I'm so glad everyone is here. Welcome to Fireside Reading. I'm Gildart, and Fireside Reading is me sitting in front of the fire, reading live to you. Or if you choose to listen to it on Instagram, on YouTube, it's me sitting reading to you, recorded, and you can watch it in your own time. I'm so glad that many people are finding this. And I have a nice piece of news, which is that I do a lot of audiobooks, and I have partnered with an audiobook company to make a slightly more professional fireside reading book. And we are doing The Wizard of Oz together. And it's going to be released by them, and hopefully people will buy it. I'm going to make sure that all of my regulars, which is the people whose names I see up there every day on the readings, that you all get a copy as my gift to you. I hope that you'll be able to enjoy it at some time by yourselves or with your families. But I'm very excited that I've got to do this and that I'm getting to do this. And it's going to be released at the end of August, start of September. So more about that as it comes up. But it's an exciting development that I look forward to sharing with you and seeing what you think about it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing this. On the contrary, I hope it means that more people around the world get to hear about this, hear about Fireside Reading, and that I get to do more of what I'm doing with that company, and that we get to have more friends join us here for these live readings. I love the live readings. It seems to me like the live reading is the hub of this whole thing, and I would love to see whether we can't get a few more people listening. But this isn't going to go away, so don't worry about that. I love doing this, and I'm going to continue as long as we all enjoy it. We are currently in the middle of David Copperfield, and I didn't do my planning tremendously well. We have not a very long part of the end of chapter 28. I'm sorry about that. I should have really done it in 2 sessions, but 2 days ago, my throat was a bit tired for some reason. I had watched a soccer match, and I found myself, England were playing in the final of something, and I found myself shouting, cheering onward, and it didn't do very good for my throat. And seeing that I spend a lot of the time reading out loud, doing audiobooks, than this, it probably wasn't the wisest thing to do. So the first one, I think I didn't quite do as much as I thought I was gonna do, but everything's back to normal now. And we're going to attack chapter 28 and see what happens. As we remember, the Micawbers and Traddles have just come over for a great dinner, during which Littimer showed up, and that was the only downside. But we left it with Copperfield suggesting to Traddles that he shouldn't lend any money to Mr. Micawber. And he hasn't any money to lend, but he shouldn't lend his name. And it seems like it was a bit too late for that. We shall find out what that means for Tommy Traddles and for the Micawbers soon. Welcome to a fireside reading of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. Chapter 28, Part 3. I returned to my fireside and was musing, half gravely and half laughing, on the character of Mr. Micawber and the old relations between us, when I heard a quick step ascending the stairs. At first I thought it was Traddles coming back for something Mrs. Micawber had left behind. But as the step approached, I knew it, and felt my heart beat high, and the blood rush to my face, for it was Steerforth's. I was never unmindful of Agnes, and she never left that sanctuary in my thoughts, if I may call it so, where I had placed her from the first. But when he entered and stood before me with his hand out, the darkness that had fallen on him changed to light, and I felt confounded and ashamed of having doubted one I loved so heartily. I loved her nonetheless. I thought of her as the same benignant, gentle angel in my life. I reproached myself, not her, with having done him any injury, and I would have made him any atonement if I had known what to make and how to make it.
"Why, Daisy, old boy, dumbfounded," laughed
Steerforth, shaking my hand heartily and throwing it gaily away.
"Have I detected you in another feast, you sybarite? These Doctors' Commons fellows are the gayest men in town, I believe, and beat us sober Oxford people all to nothing."
His bright glance went merrily round the room as he took the seat on the sofa opposite to me, which Mrs. Micawber had recently vacated, and stirred the fire into a blaze. "I was so surprised at first," said I, giving him welcome with all the cordiality I felt, "that I had hardly breath to greet you with, Steerforth."
"Well, the sight of me is good for sore eyes, as the Scotch say," replied Steerforth. "And so is the sight of you, Daisy, in full bloom. How are you, my bacchanal?"
"I am very well," said I, "and not at all bacchanalian tonight, though I confess to another party of 3.
"All of whom I met in the street, talking loud in your praise," returned Steerforth. "Who's our friend in the tights?"
I gave him the best idea I could in a few words of Mr. Micawber. He laughed heartily at my feeble portrait of that gentleman, and said he was a man to know, and he must know him. "But who do you suppose our other friend is?" said I in my turn.
"Heaven knows," said Steerforth. "Not a bore, I hope. I thought he looked a little like one."
"Traddles," I replied triumphantly.
"Who's he?"
asked Steerforth in his careless way.
"Don't you remember Traddles? Traddles, in our room at Salem House."
"Oh, that fellow," said Steerforth, beating a lump of coal on the top of the fire with the poker. "Is he as soft as ever, and where the deuce did you pick him up?" I extolled Traddles in reply as highly as I could, for I felt that Steerforth rather slighted him. Steerforth, dismissing the subject with a light nod and a smile, and the remark that he would be glad to see the old fellow too, for he had always been an odd fish, inquired if I could give him anything to eat. During most of this short dialogue, when he had not been speaking in a wild, vivacious manner, he had sat idly beating on the lump of coal with the poker. I observed that he did the same thing while I was getting out the remains of the pigeon pie and so forth.
"Why, Daisy, here's a supper for a king," he exclaimed, starting out of his silence with a burst and taking his seat at the table. "I shall do it justice, for I have come from Yarmouth."
"I thought you came from Oxford," I returned.
"Not I," said Steerforth. "I have been seafaring, better employed."
"Littimer was here today to inquire for you," I remarked, "and I understood him that you were at Oxford. Though now I think of it, he certainly did not say so."
"Littimer is a greater fool than I thought him to have been inquiring for me at all," said Steerforth, jovially pouring out a glass of wine and drinking to me. "As to understanding him, you are a cleverer fellow than most of us, Daisy, if you can do that."
"True indeed," said I, moving my chair to the table. So, you have been at Yarmouth, Steerforth. Interested to know all about it. Have you been there long?
No, he returned. An escapade of a week or so.
And how are they all? Of course, little Emily is not married yet.
Not yet. Going to be, I believe, in so many weeks or months or something or other. I have not seen much of them. By the by, he laid down his knife and fork, which he had been using with great diligence, and began feeling in his pockets. I have a letter for you.
From whom?
Why, from your old nurse, he returned, taking some papers out of his breast pocket. J. Steerforth, Esquire, debtor to the willing mind. That's not it. Patience, and we'll find it presently. Old what's-his-name's in a bad way, and it's about that, I believe.
Barkis, do you mean?
Yes, still feeling in his pockets and looking over their contents. It's all over with poor Barkis, I'm afraid. I saw a little apothecary there, a surgeon, or whatever he is, who brought your worship into the world. He was mighty learned about the case to me, but the upshot of his opinion was that the carrier was making his last journey rather fast. Put your hand into the breast pocket of my greatcoat on the chair yonder, and I think you'll find the letter. Is it there?
Here it is, said I.
That's right.
It was from Peggotty. Something less legible than usual and brief. It informed me of her husband's hopeless state and hinted at his being a little nearer than heretofore, and consequently more difficult to manage for his own comfort. It said nothing of her weariness and watching, and praised him highly. It was written with a plain, unaffected, homely piety that I knew to be genuine, and ended with, "My duty to my ever darling," meaning myself. While I deciphered it, Steerforth continued to eat and drink.
It's a bad job, he said when I had done. But the sun sets every day, and people die every minute, and we mustn't be scared by the common lot. If we failed to hold our own because that equal foot at all men's doors was heard knocking somewhere, every object in this world would slip from us. No, ride on, rough-shod if need be, smooth-shod if that will do, but ride on over all obstacles and win the race.
And win what race? Said I.
The race that one has started in, said he. Ride on.
I noticed, I remember, as he paused, looking at me, with his handsome head a little thrown back and his glass raised in his hand, that though the freshness of the sea wind was on his face and it was ruddy, there were traces in it made since I last saw it, as if he'd applied himself to some habitual strain of the fervent energy which, when roused, was so passionately roused within him. I had it in my thoughts to remonstrate with him upon his desperate way of pursuing any fancy that he took, such as this buffeting of rough seas and braving of hard weather, for example, when my mind glanced off to the subject of our conversation again, and pursued that instead. I tell you what, Steerforth, said I, if your high spirits will listen to me.
They are potent spirits, and will do whatever you like, he answered, moving from the table to the fireside again.
Then I tell you what, Steerforth, I think I will go down and see my old nurse. It is not that I can do her any good or render her any real service, but she is so attached to me that my visit will have as much effect on her as if I could do both. She will take it so kindly that it will be a comfort and support to her. It is no great effort to make, I'm sure, for such a friend as she has been to me. Wouldn't you go a day's journey if you were in my place?
His face was thoughtful, and he sat considering a little before he answered in a low voice, "Well, go. You can do no harm." "You have just come back," said I, "and it would be in vain to ask you to go with me." "Quite," he returned. "I am for Highgate tonight. I have not seen my mother this long time, and it lies upon my conscience, for it's something to be loved as she loves her prodigal son." "Bah! Nonsense. You mean to go tomorrow, I suppose," he said, holding me out at arm's length with a hand on each of my shoulders. "Yes, I think so." "Well, then don't go till next day. I wanted you to come and stay a few days with us. Here I am on purpose to bid you, and you fly off to Yarmouth." "You are a nice fellow to talk of flying off, Steerforth, who were always running wild on some unknown expedition or other." He looked at me for a moment without speaking, and then rejoined, still holding me as before and giving me a shake, "Come, say the next day, and pass as much of tomorrow as you can with us. Who knows when we may meet again else? Come, say the next day. I want you to stand between Rosa Dartle and me and keep us asunder." "Would you love each other too much without me?" "Yes, or hate," laughed Steerforth. "No matter which, come, say the next day." I said the next day, and he put on his greatcoat and lighted his cigar and set off to walk home. Finding him in this intention, I put on my own greatcoat, but did not light my own cigar, having had enough of that for one while, and walked with him as far as the open road, a dull road then at night. He was in great spirits all the way, and when we parted, and I looked after him going so gallantly and airily homeward, I thought of him saying, "Ride on over all obstacles and win the race," and wished for the first time that he had some worthy race to run. I was undressing in my own room when Mr. Micawber's letter tumbled on the floor. Thus reminded of it, I broke the seal and read as follows. It was dated an hour and a half before dinner. I'm not sure whether I have mentioned that when Mr. Micawber was at any particularly desperate crisis, he used a sort of legal phraseology which he seemed to think equivalent to winding up his affairs. "Sir, for I dare not say, my dear Copperfield, it is expedient that I should inform you that the undersigned is crushed. Some flickering efforts to spare you the premature knowledge of his calamitous position you may observe in him this day, but hope has sunk beneath the horizon, and the undersigned is crushed. The present communication is penned with the personal range, I cannot call it the society, of an individual in a state closely bordering on intoxication, employed by a broker. That individual is in legal possession of the premises under a distress for rent. His inventory includes not only the chattels and effects of every description belonging to the undersigned as yearly tenant of this habituation, but also those appertaining to Mr. Thomas Traddles, lodger, a member of the Honourable Society of the Inner Temple. If any drop of gloom were wanting in the overflowing cup which is now commended, in the language of an immortal writer, to the lips of the undersigned, it would be found in the fact that a friendly acceptance granted to the undersigned by the before-mentioned Mr. Thomas Traddles for the sum of £23 4 shillings 9.5 is overdue and is not provided for. Also, in the fact that the living responsibilities clinging to the undersigned will, in the course of nature, be increased by the sum of one more helpless victim, whose miserable appearance may be looked for in round numbers at the expiration of a period not exceeding 6 lunar months from the present date. After premising thus much, it would be a work of supererogation to add that dust and ashes are forever scattered on the head of Wilkins Micawber. Poor Traddles. I knew enough of Mr. Micawber by this time to foresee that he might be expected to recover the blow. But my night's rest was sorely distressed by thoughts of Traddles, and of the curate's daughter, who was one of 10 down in Devonshire, and who was such a dear girl, and who would wait for Traddles, ominous praise, until she was 60, or any age that could be mentioned. Poor Tommy Traddles, Mr. Micawber. It seems, I didn't quite fully understand, but it seems that because he was some sort of surety to Micawber's debts, that he is in for a lot of money, and that he clearly can't afford it. Oh well, we shall find out what happens to Tommy Traddles as we move along, and we find out what happens to everyone. I hope you're all enjoying this as much as I am. My name's Gildart Jackson. This is Fireside Reading. Please join us live every day at 5 Pacific at Fireside Reading on Instagram. All the chapters uploaded to the YouTube channel, Fireside Reading. And if you'd like to subscribe and comment and like, that would be wonderful. Until I see you all again tomorrow, same time and place, good night.